Welcome all as we congregate to the greatest toy line in community, ever growing, ever changing. As we collect and adapt these figures to our own imaginations and embrace the fun, there's much to learn, especially if you're new to Mythics. Hello and welcome to another episode of New to Mythics, episode 60. Woo! Nice. Featuring Mr. Eric Treadaway. Thank you, beyond thank you for being here. Speechless. Not really, but I'm speechless.
I hope you're not speechless. This will be a quick episode.
Right, yeah. Right. Exactly. I just wanted to, be a fanboy for a second. I don't want to embarrass you, but just want to say what a huge fan I am and love the studio, love the people that you work with, love the product that you guys come out with every year, and just a huge fan of how you guys run it, of what you create, just everything. So thank you for what you guys do. I'm a fan.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. I had to get that out of the way. Just wanted to say you guys are awesome and love everything that you do. Where to begin? Congratulations on BEHINF. I wanted to start with that. That was a huge thing for us as fans. That was huge. For you, I'm wondering, and I know you talked about it at length with Jeremy, but can you kind of talk about the process of BEHINF and where it came from, and was it kind of inspired by, our anniversary is coming, we need to, I need to make this thing, or was it kind of more of an organic, like it's time, I'm going to, what was the process on that?
I mean, those, were both factors, in the decision of the timing of it. The anniversary certainly helped to push us over the edge and make it happen. But like many things that, that do happen with the studio, I mean, it did just feel like it was time to do it. We've talked about it for so long. We've, the community's talked about it for so long.
Right. You're like, enough already. Okay.
Well, that's it. I mean, it's kind of one of my concerns is like, what do people ask for once we actually do this dragon? Like, what's the next, mountain to climb after this?
Don't try and top yourself. Just make amazing like you normally do. Don't worry about us. We're gonna love what you make.
Well, I mean, it is one of those like projects where it's like, yeah, I mean, to come in and try to do bigger, better, whatever immediately after, we're never really big on like forcing something like that. But the next thing that that turns out to be exciting, it'll just happen. It's trying, and also I feel like let's enjoy this one for for a little bit too. But as far as the timing of it, it really it was Year of the Dragon. Chris kept pushing that. The anniversary, it was the double anniversary. So
right.
It just that seemed like something, a way to celebrate all of that. And I think for us, part of like the decision making with it was also like, when did we hit a point that we were comfortable enough, with the size of the fan base that we've built up, our skills and knowledge, like to put something together like this, to have the team put together at the studio where we could actually, make this thing, like beyond just the, the concept or the sculpting. It was complex from day one to right now. It's that hasn't changed. Even the blisters, blister trays inside of the packaging. One day I walk in and Chris throws me a curveball with that. I mean, that's the sort of thing that's usually just almost like plug and play. The factory, they know where to go with a blister tray for a figure, and Chris gives some direction. But here, this thing's got significant weight to it.
Right.
The size of the box and the trays is so much larger. So yeah, I mean, we needed to be in a position as a company that we could take everything that came at us with this project. And so we just, we knew it was the time. Yeah.
Now and I don't know if you can say, and I don't know if you want to reveal it or not, but will the dragon be in like styrofoam, you think, or is it like a blister, like figures? Do you know yet? Are you guys still working on that?
I honestly don't. I don't know if I can say with 100% certainty if I remember. I know the options that we were looking at. There was plastic blister, like a standard action figure. There was foam. There's cardboard, as if they're vertical, horizontal pieces of cardboard with sections cut out that the piece laid in. And then there's also, I don't know what you would call it. It's also a paper product, like a cardboard product, but it's where it's almost like a blister tray made out of cardboard, like chipboard type material. Yeah. I want to say that might have been what we decided on. But just kind of like a little behind the scenes type of thing. When those started coming through, the fluctuations in pricing from one to the other were huge. And luckily the way the factory priced it to us, like it was at the high end of that. But the swings from one to the other, out of those four options, every single one of those had a different price. And again, like normally it's just standard issue, so it's not even a discussion. Here it's a discussion. It's looking at pictures and blister layouts and all this in a way that we just normally wouldn't have to do.
So if it was like a mount, it would be like the standard box, or if it was a brute scale, it would be the regular brute scale type box thing. So that's kind of autonomous. Like you don't need to be in on what that, but like for the dragon, since it's such an extraordinary piece and different and unusual, you had to be in on the process of how the packing was. Now, did you guys have, was it figured out, the packaging, like before, like you guys came to us for the Kickstarter type thing, or was this after? Like, did you guys have to figure out the shipping or the packaging after?
The packaging size we had ahead of time. That we, just to calculate, how to offer this thing out. We did do that, and generally we do that with if it's a new figure that's a little larger or whatever, we know beforehand if it's going to be an oversized box, how many to a case it's going to be, and all that kind of thing. Here again, with the scope of the project, we actually we had those dimensions pretty early, and that's actually that's why that blister thing threw us for a loop a little bit, because that was, I guess, almost kind of assumed, and then they present us with 4 options, and this was maybe a month ago, so this was much more recent.
Oh, okay. So it was recent that they gave you the options. Back what we were talking about a minute ago about the factory and the dragon, like, were you ever concerned about if they could do it, or would there be difficulties? And I know it's kind of like a process now, and like Chris is kind of the production side of it, but like, was there ever concern, like, okay, I made this, can they make this? Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah. and yes. Yeah, because I mean, we had, again, we've never done anything this big before. So, we're using knowledge that we have and experience that, with past products. But we're still in the realm of making educated guesses on how this piece is going to go together. And, because as far as even in the design process, and certainly through the sculpting process, I couldn't approach it the same way that I would with a normal figure, where, the weight is not as much of an issue. You already know what the materials are going to be. Here, we just based on the size, and as we were printing pieces out, we were assuming that it was going to be almost as if you took a troll and put him on his hands and feet, and then put a different, figure out what the material is on the wings. But where it's the troll, it's mostly roto vinyl. There are some injection molded PVC parts to it, and so we thought there was going to be some combination with that. But then when the factory started coming back with pricing and their approach to it, it was different in a lot of cases than the way we thought it was going to be. Because they had concerns about how much weight that it would bear, what type of joints to use in particular areas and things like that. And it does become a little nerve-wracking when the direction changes so quickly. But those bits of trepidation and uncertainty, they were short-lived, and that's where Chris is invaluable, where he just the back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and although certain things are not the way that we thought they were going to be constructed, from the beginning, they're actually, if anything, it's being overly cautious. It's overcompensated, which I don't mind going in, because it's I'm even more confident in the construction, and just the fact that the factory pushed back as they did, like they were just they wanted to be comfortable enough that they could guarantee the construction and the product. So again, like a standard 6-7 inch Mythic figure, we know how those joints are going to be made. We know what plastic's going to be flexible, what plastic's going to be rigid, all that. So yeah, I mean, there were, so to answer your question in a shorter form, yeah, I mean, there were definitely points where there was at least some concern that they wouldn't be able to at least do it in the way that we envisioned it.
Right.
At one point, there's I think we've discussed, there was an early version and we upsized it. We didn't feel it was big enough.
Right.
And even that little kind of split second thought of having to shrink it back down just to make it whatever it is fit in the box, get the weight lighter, what make it so that you can construct it differently. That's a sobering moment or two when that happens, but
I can imagine.
So
was it like, did you have the price kind of in mind where it's like, guys, I want it to be something that as many fans as possible can get? What size can we, or was it basically you're dealing with size that makes you guys satisfied? Like, I want it to be this big, as opposed to, well, like, what was price a factor in the size, or was the size more your satisfaction? I guess is what I'm wondering.
It was, yeah. I mean, the size came first. We let the price follow. CB mentioned 3-foot dragon all those years ago,
right?
And that was in my head the
Damn
entire
it.
time I was working on this thing. And when we had it at that smaller size, the wings were at 3 feet. From nose to tail was at 3 feet at that point. So it fit the criteria that that everybody was expecting, that we talked about. And it just I just knew when I saw it, it was just not enough. Like it just wasn't. Even though it was 3 feet long, it's like when you hear a 3-foot dragon, you got something in your mind, and that was not it. Especially when we saw a picture of it next to the troll and the horse, and it just, I mean, it certainly would have been cool, and like, still would have been, like, I think the biggest dragon action figure ever made and all that stuff. But it just, it just had that gut reaction to it. And so we went for it. And of course the price was, again, it was a complete unknown. It was a crapshoot. There just wasn't, we could look at things like HasLab projects, and some of the large items Super 7 did, and even going back to when we did Gray Skull for Mattel years ago, and just kind of looking at all of those projects and analyzing the number of backers, the price, how big the pieces were compared to the price, and all that, and then factor in the fact that we're an independent toy company, and this is a line that's not an IP that's licensed out, that people have known for 30 plus years, and just trying to take all of that information and at least set ourselves up to, with some idea of what we were getting into. But I mean, ultimately you don't know until not even day one of the putting the sale up, and really until the end of it. So
that had to be gratifying, though, like that it not only funded but went way over, and everyone loved it, like that, the unveiling and then the final tally of how many, that had to be a gratifying thing for you guys as a studio.
Oh yeah. I mean, and we've done multiple Kickstarters in the past, and I don't know how many sales at this point, and no matter how many you've been in for, it's still, your confidence, like that, you go back down to base level anytime you jump into something new. And certainly a crowdfund type thing, because it's so public. It's there's a different atmosphere surrounding a crowdfund than there is a standard sale. And because there's, as a studio, like everybody, has lived this dragon for a long time. So,
right.
Everybody at the studio is completely in on it. When it's public like this and people are watching it every day, the fan base is in on it in a different way than a sale would be. So, if it fails, you've got a lot of disappointed people,
right.
From one end to the other. And so, those, of course, like as they tend to do, like a good start on it, and then it kind of stalls out a little bit in the middle, and then it's stressful.
The up and the
yeah, and you just and and then you just have to be kind of confident in your decisions, and you have to be flexible and move with the campaign. But then when you get to the end, and the way that it ended, and with the 24-hour broadcasts, and the fact that it was the full community-wide event, and then all the generosity that we were seeing at the end of that. I mean, it just was so much positivity at the end of that project.
Beautiful moment.
Yeah,
that it really encapsulated how generous and thoughtful this community is, and this and how much love there is with the studio, and you guys donated one, and my buddy Brian, he won one and gave it to another friend that didn't have one. So it was just an amazing end to this campaign that you guys started. I wanted to ask, I'm always with you, like I'm always interested in your creativity. Like that to me, like, is so interesting. I spoke to Jeremy a few weeks ago on a show that hasn't aired yet, but he mentioned two things that I wanted to talk to you about. The first thing is about Behathir, of course, is that the process that you had to go through, like the rigors, or like he used the word grueling for you, like and I know it's tough being creative. Like, how do I know when I'm done? How do I know that it's good, or I should stop now? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like a lot of people that are creative are perfectionists. And so did you go through that kind of thing with the dragon? And then, are you satisfied with the final product?
I mean, again, the working on that piece was unique, it compared to any other project I've worked on. And it's tough to use the word grueling for for something that I love doing.
Like the scales, like I think he was talking about having to sculpt every scale, on that dragon. It's it's majestic, but like the closer that you look, there's so much detail that you packed into that. But you hand sculpted every single, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think with that project, again, it was just they were all the new circumstances with this giant piece. So there's that factor, which any new project kind of has its technical challenges, and the new experiences to deal with on any particular project. So that that's almost like part of the deal. So but I mean, here there were more than usual. But I mean, with this one, there was a lot of pressure, a lot of like self-imposed pressure.
I can
with
imagine.
This one.
I mean, you're the creator, like you create everything. So like you have a unique pressure, right? Because like your vision is what we see. So, you have that unique pressure of you're the creator, right?
Right. So yeah, if something doesn't work, I certainly feel it. Like I there's definitely like a responsibility that because I feel like there's so much privilege to what I do, but there's the responsibilities there as well. And with this one, I think that's a lot of what was. There were points with this project where I hated it. I would walk in and look at it on the screen, and it was just not special. The thing for me is like a lot of times, like I'll do something, and more than likely, like if I put it out, like people would probably like it, like, but there's things about it that would bug me,
Right.
And in this case, it was an exaggerated version of that, because I had something in my head, like a certain level of power that this visually needed to have and convey. And so, like, early on, like there were dragons that they were perfectly serviceable looking dragon proportions and features, but a lot of times when I'm working on something like this, there's just like a moment where there's like something clicks, and I think it was at some point, like I kind of figured out that it was in the neck and head relationship, and once that happened, I came in, and then all of a sudden it was instantaneous. I could see it. I was excited about it. I knew where to go with it from that point. But even after that, like I'm just, because of the fact that the scale is so large, like just so many print tests just to look at the scale of the texture. And because when I'm working at it on my screen, it doesn't matter if it's a goblin arm or a dragon arm. If I blow it up to a certain size on the screen, it looks the same,
right?
And the level of detail that I'm putting on it can look the same. And usually the problem is that I pack all this detail in and then print it out, say at like a goblin arm size, and it's not, it gets wiped out because it's just too much for the size, or it needs to go bolder with the texture or whatever. Here it was the opposite. Here, because I'm used to working at a certain size, and there's a bicep or upper arm that's this big, and it comes out and it's the detail looks too broad, or it almost you run the risk of it looking almost like preschoolish, just if you don't scale the details accordingly. And so that was a lot of just trial and error, but ultimately I'm very proud of the way that it came out, and it looks like what I had in my head, and that's not even what I had in my head was not even so much specifically like a complete design, but it was just, again, like what the overall effect of that that figure is. Like it has a certain presence, and it has a certain mythicness to it, because that's part of it too. This is a mythic Legion's dragon, right? So that means something. That means something different, than whatever other dragon that's right out there that you want to compare it to, or
I agree.
Or, that's made a successful dragon design.
I agree. So does it help your creative process to print something and kind of hold it?
100%.
It does it.
I that's one of the things I've said I tell people when I'm talking about, getting into ZBrush or digital sculpting, that when I first started, I pretty famously talked about how much trouble I had with it and how tough the transition was. But once we got digital printers at the office, and this was pretty early on into my learning, like as soon as we got that printer, my trajectory shot from there, because I could sculpt something, go put it on the printer the next day, look at it, see if it worked, have it in hand, because that's ultimately what this is all about. It's getting the figure in your hand and posing it, displaying it. And so, absolutely, it's part of the process with anything that we do. Just because I finish a piece and put it on the printer, that is absolutely no guarantee that that's a finished piece at that point. Mm-hmm. I inspect it, go over it, put it through the paces. I almost never is there a figure where at least a handful of pieces don't go through a second round after, we have them in hand.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And how close is the printed piece to the factory's samples that they send you? Is there like a big difference in that, or can it be pretty similar? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, I mean, that definitely does. It's almost, I would say it's like 98% accurate. The biggest change is that when we we're working at 104%. We print at 104% unless we're specifically bringing it down to production size. So when it shows up from the factory in test shop form, it's final size, which is slightly smaller. That's the biggest difference. Occasionally there'll be something where just there's like a little warpage from the production process or something like that. But I mean, the level of accuracy is astonishingly high, and the paint as well, for that matter. We used to sculpt it by hand and in castelline and clay and wax and all that stuff. And for years and years, we sculpted at 200%. Just to pack the detail in, we could get a higher fidelity level of, detail. And then, you'd send it over to China and they would use a pantograph to shrink it down. The level of accuracy, I mean, was generally pretty good with that, but, there was the potential for disaster. Mm-hmm. And it's anybody who was sculpting at that size and having product shrunk down experienced those disastrous results from time to time. And it's, it's tough, especially if it's too late to go back and try to fix it. Whereas just by going at 104%, that cuts so much of that room for error out. But on top of that, now since we're working digitally, a lot of what happens is we don't. At one point we were sending digital prints as tooling patterns, but now the files just go over and then they print directly off the file. So just margin of error just keeps compressing down as the years have gone on. And I mean, it's there's things do happen still, but it's the percentage is so minute that it's not a huge stressor at this point.
Yeah. Well, I think I had asked you at intern about the detail, and I think you had said something like you almost over detail because you know you might lose a little bit in the process of, you know, the making of the figure or the head sculpt or the arm or whatever, that you over, because you know that there will be some loss in that detail.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, you know, because you're going through several stages in the process, and so, you know, just the process of going, you know, from that print into the tooling into a injection molded plastic. It's like this, you know, the plastic version is like ever so slightly softer sometimes, and then, you know, if you throw a layer of paint on top of it,
Right.
That'll wipe out a certain level of texture and detail. So yeah, I mean, you know, that's part of, I guess, you know, having some experience over time with this is that, you just try to counter that, you know, as much as you can, just so that when because for me, you know, something I've figured out early on, like when you're working on the piece, like it's, you know, there's a preciousness to it, and, you know, it's your creation, and, you know, especially in those early years, like at McFarlane, like where, you know, you're, you know, was young and idealistic and, you know, whatever,
Right.
know, coming out of, you know, art school and all that kind of stuff. But you know, you realize quickly that it really doesn't matter what you sculpted it in, what the prototype looked like, any of this other stuff. What's the you know, it's the final product that somebody actually has in their hand, and so that's, you know, that's all that matters. You know, at the end of all of this, and so yeah, I mean, it's just anything like that can be done to, you know, make sure that it makes it through production in the best possible way. You know, even when we're looking at paint applications and paint processes, you know, Sherry and Cameron, Joe, Bill, Eric, you know, anybody who's painting this, like, I have 1,000% confidence that they can paint anything that we could put our minds to. You know,
you've got some amazing talent.
there's no question.
You guys got some amazing people working for you for sure.
No, I mean, we've, you know, the dream team. You know, that's what Matt Dowdy always calls it, and he's right. You know, I mean, it's people that, you know, we've slowly put this team together over the years, almost like, you know, curated this team, because you know, it's you know, some people there we wanted for years and just waited for the opportunity. Other people, you know, happened more by chance, but it was like the perfect person at the perfect time.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, that's yeah.
That's something I want to get into. But I wanted to ask about, before we move on to other stuff. I feel like you've really, this is just my unexperienced opinion, but I feel like you have really pushed the envelope when it comes to detail. Like I can see Faunus, I'm looking at Faunus, I'm looking at even Bastet, but like I look at Necronominus and like the headpiece, like just the detail that you put into this is like, I could just sit and stare at it. Like, that's insane. So I feel like you keep pushing that envelope when it comes to, you know, to sculpting on ZBrush. Has there been like a progression for you? Like, do you feel like you're more confident, like you've figured things out more, or you've gotten better at it? Like, what has the process been with your sculpting, you know, to go from you know, maybe some older figures to, you know, Ganesha and Necronominus. Like it's amazing, like the detail that you found in your sculpting.
I mean, there's definitely no question. There's been a quite a big swing, you know, over the years of you know, once I've gotten into ZBrush, and you know, as a creator, like, you know, you're always evolving and you know, hopefully getting better at what you do and more confident. And you know, like once at the like that whole transition period of going from traditional sculpting into digital sculpting, there was like my, you know, my kind of like creative ambition didn't slow down at all, but learning the program certainly put some limitations on what I was doing. And I think I was able to kind of get pretty quickly to where I was in traditional sculpting. And then, but I, you know, once I got like over the hump with the ZBrush, you know, I loved it so quickly because all the ideas that I had and things that I wanted to do became so much more accessible. Just, you know, Necronominus is a great example. Like, if I were making that traditionally, to make those wings, to make all those little like ribs on the headdress, like every single one of those would have had like, you know, had twisted wire armature, and you know,
I can't imagine.
It's just stuff, you know, pieces breaking and you know, re-detailing it, you know, all this. Whereas in ZBrush, I can concentrate on the design. I can concentrate on the creativity. And there is still, you know, there are technical aspects of ZBrush, and you know, I always say, if I know 5% of ZBrush, I would be shocked. But I'm to the point where, you know, where at least I can get pretty much what I want out of it. And you know, I definitely am more confident with it, and more comfortable, to where I can, you know, get the look that I want and the functionality that I want much faster than I could, you know, 5 years ago. So however, actually, God, it's more than that now. But you know, but you mentioned Faunus. You know, like that era, Advent of Decay was really where digital started to work its way into Mythic, mostly in the heads, and even those, we were printing them, molding them, pouring Castelline in, and finishing them traditionally. But you know, I go back and look at some of those and just some of that early digital work, and you know, every once in a while I'll open up one of those files, and especially if you know, when it's, by the time it's a figure, you don't see it as much. But if I open up one of those files and look at it compared to what's being done now, you know, it just looks so crude.
We still love them though. We still love those. It doesn't matter.
Well, I mean, and you know, I do too. It's but you know, like doing the 2.0s and like doing legacies now.
Yes.
Like, you know, I open up an old file like that and look at it, and it's, you know, there's no, you know, no dislike of it or no negative feelings. It's more that like I, you know, open up a file like that, and it's exciting to me to look at it and say, well, what could I do with that?
Right.
Now? Like, even if I kept that same form and just, you know, put more finesse into it, put, you know, skin texture on it, things like that, that I just couldn't really do at the time.
Right.
Like almost like looking at it as though like, okay, well, now I can really finish it.
Right. So like you're not, technology or the ability to make it doesn't stop you now. So like if you had a dream for Faunus, like you could really create whatever your creative mind could come up with, you know. So like you don't have the shackles, I guess, of more cruder ways of sculpting now.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a combination too. It's the, the limitations of, just my knowledge of the program and my abilities at the time. But also, Advent and Decay, I'd still argue we're, very much a fledgling line at that point.
What's the matter? She needs attention. You okay? How's your doggies doing?
They're good.
Good.
They're good. Luckily, they're being pretty quiet right now.
Yeah.
Especially one of them, Luna. Like, she loves to stand at the window and just bark at everybody passing.
We've got one of those. Yeah.
Yeah. It's been a beautiful day today, so there's been lots of people walking their dogs out there, and yeah, it's sometimes it's enough to drive me crazy.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Advent and Decay was what you were talking about. I apologize.
But yeah, I would say, I would argue, we're still like, that was an early, the early days of what we were doing. And, so aside from just those technical limitations, there's also just the fact that, we had to be so careful with the amount of new tooling that we were adding. The sales of the figures were just like a tiny fraction, of what we have now. Like the fan base we really had not hit like the true stride with the community that we've got behind us. Like that was maybe just like the very first, steps there. And so just with all the support that we've gotten over the years, some of those figures that maybe it was just a new head on existing parts. Like now, we could go in and, just add new accessories, add new parts to where it's a more fully realized version of the character. Again, like I said, like, 2.0s, like, what we're going to do with legacies. It's an opportunity now that we're, more mature, to take a second look at those concepts and, really, I guess, also bring them up to the level that the rest of the line is now. Because I know Jeremy's mentioned several times, those All-Stars waves where we have a brand new figure in it, and then we have a wave one reissue, and you can see the difference. They still, they can hang together, but it is obvious that there's been a progression there.
Right. And I can see it, like, from an artist point of view, I can see how it's like, if the figures, if you look at an analogy of like, this figure is a painting. I made this figure or painting 10 years ago. I like it. It's still good. But here's me and my natural progression as an artist. 10 years later, I've got this painting or figure, and it's like, I can tell, through technology and me, understanding more and using my talent to, and this technology to make something more defined and more articulate or detailed. Like, I can see, like, I would prefer this because, this is where I've progressed to. So, you're not ashamed of these amazing figures that you made. I get that. But it's like, and I see, like, Jeremy speaks for you very well, where he says, like, Eric doesn't want to, because we're like, me as a fan, I love the reissues. I thought that was great. I really appreciate it because as a new fan, I could buy these figures that I didn't really have access to. And I love them. Like, I'm looking at Scapular version 1 right now, and I'm like, I love this figure. It's kind of basic nowadays, I guess you could say, but it's still beautiful. It's still a beautiful figure. But I also love what you did with version 2. So, like, as fans, we're excited. We love the old stuff, but we're also really excited for what's to come. And I get that from your point of view, your perspective. It's exciting to make new stuff. It's like, yes, old stuff is cool, but I want to make new stuff. I totally get that from you.
A lot of times I look just, for I find parallels with music and music makers, which I am not. I listen, I'm a fan of bands. I'm a fan of music. That's completely out of my realm. But, I just in reading about bands and like following bands and like their progression as musicians, like there's always, there's those early albums and they're raw and, unhoned. But there's a lot of energy to it and there's a lot of excitement, and it's what generally, fans fall in love with. And it's where the journey begins with, your fandom. But then you watch as these artists mature and, their sound becomes more refined and a lot of times you see musicians who they kind of hit that crossroads where, they may have played those old songs so many times, or to them, it's not up to the standard of what they're doing now.
Right.
They want to play the new stuff. But then you see some of these people who refuse to play the old stuff, or they just they're hard headed about the new material, and that's all they want to do. But then it's always nice when you see when they kind of they just have that reckoning where they're like, they embrace the old and the new, and that they can coexist at the same time. And I feel like there's a lot of parallels, especially the longer you do this stuff. And so when we do a 2.0, kind of very much what you said, like, just because we're doing that 2.0 doesn't mean that we're, turning our back on the 1.0. It's just, it's fun to go back and revisit, especially if you do, have a love for that first one. So yeah, I don't know. I like that sort of stuff. Just, I don't know, like the music thing. There's so many times I read interviews and things like that, and obviously being in a band and being a rock star and stuff is, a lot more, flashy and exciting than being toy makers. But it is, there's so many of the same, bits of the process that line up with that.
Right.
I don't know. It makes me appreciate musicians and music more. So I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I'm a big Eagles fan, and I'm the band Eagles, not the team. But no, I mean, the team is fine, but I'm just saying the band Eagles. I mean, I'm sure they played Hotel California like a billion times, and I get that they would want to play something different or something new, like, hey, we made this new song, let's play this. But people still love Hotel California. And it was neat. They did like a Spanish acoustic guitar kind of, Hell Freezes Over, and they took Hotel California and turned it into something completely different, but still had the bones, kind of like Scapular 1 and 2. It's like, this is something amazing and beautiful right here, but let's take the bones of that and make something, completely different and new and amazing with this technology that I have, and this, the ability and the parts and, all this other stuff, and make it something recognizable, but also something new and amazing that makes me interested to make it, so I get that from you. Like, it's a cool thing. Like, I'm glad that you guys have decided to do that. It's like you're looking backward, but you're also, like, we appreciate this stuff and these, characters like ortho or scapular or whatever, and it's like, let's modernize them and make them, you know, something, you know, new, but also, you know, harkens back to the old cool stuff.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I think we're excited about Legacies, because it allows us to continue doing that and to continue, you know, just keeping those characters that, you know, go back to the early days, like keeping them relevant, keeping them, you know, in the conversation, available to people who are new to the line. But by, you know, doing that as its own subline allows us then with Mythic proper to continue to move forward, so that we don't just get in a you know, a repeating circular pattern on it. It you know, it allows us, you know, to explore new territory.
So what is your process for like your daily? Do you mostly work at home? Do you kind of balance between home and the studio? And then, like, I think you told me an intern that like you'll work for like 8 hours just like drawing or creating like stuff. Like, is that every day? Is that a few days a week? Like, can you kind of walk us through your creative process?
Yeah. You know, I guess an average work week is, especially during the school year, you know, we all get up, everybody gets off to school in the morning. They're usually out of here at 7:30 in the morning. So I'm up here, you know, 7:40, 7:45. You know, it's usually really quiet at that time of day. Because I used to be very much a night owl, and I would work through the night. But with, you know, kids going to school and all that, like it's just that work block is just kind of moved around the clock.
Plus, we're getting older.
There is that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is an absolute factor.
I like my sleep.
Yeah. And you know, I've always liked my sleep, but now there's like, you know, we're downstairs watching a movie and I can't stay awake during it. So it's, you know, it's less, you know, it's less about my desire to sleep and more about my body forcing me. But yeah, so like I get an early start, and usually Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I'll work, eat a late lunch, and then go into the office, you know, maybe around 2:00, something like that. You know, stay depending on if I've got to, you know, what I've got to do, if I got to go pick up the kids or anything like that. You know, I'll stay until like 5:30, 6. I'll go in a little earlier. That's Monday and Friday. Wednesday, I'll do the same thing, but go in a little earlier. Because we have some meetings on Wednesdays, you know, so it's a good half a day those days, and then Tuesdays and Thursdays I'll you know, start at 7:45 and go until you know, late afternoon, and then I work. You know, sometimes I'll work on the weekend, sometimes I'll come back up at night and work. Like, you know, for me, like, I want to be up here working, you know, that's so it's usually like I don't have enough time in here sculpting. But you know, when it gets to crunch time, you know, I make, you know, I make more time, you know, I'll push it later into the night, or you know, I might spend less time downstairs, you know, I might have a quicker dinner or something like that and get back up to work. So you know, it you know, it is about finding the balance, because you know, when I'm at the office, I'm not getting sculpting done. When I'm at home sculpting, I'm not doing what I need to do at the office. So It's just trying to find that right mix. And it's just I got to be flexible, and
Right.
if there's a day I need to be at the office all day, I do that. Or if I need a little extra time at home, I'll be a little more scarce at the office.
Mm-hmm. So do you create like project wise, like, how do I ask this in the right way? So when you sit down, are you just raw creating things, or are you like, okay, I've got this project, say the new G-Con wave, just for an instance. Okay, so today I need to work on this wave. I got to work on this. Or tomorrow I've got to work on, I got to start working on this project. Or do you have days where you just like, I just want to create, like, I have an idea that I got in my sleep and I want to, I thought of a new mount, or I thought of something for Cosmic, like what is and does that structure help you if that is how you do it?
I mean, that just sitting down and creating from scratch does not happen often.
Okay.
Not enough, because it's a very different exercise in creativity to do that. That's I say it all the time when we do Intern for a Day. That's one of the things I enjoy about it, because it is where I go in and sit down. I don't know what I'm going to do before I sit, and it's just it's usually a head that I'm doing, so it's just an hour of just pure sculpting.
Mm-hmm.
And that, and I mean, the problem with that, if you do that all the time, like without the structure, it could just be digital doodling, or um, stacks and stacks of unfinished projects. And so, with the structure that's in place, I mean, there is that freedom to create, and especially like if we're doing alternate heads and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that will be. It's just like, all right, this, whatever. If we're doing Cosmic, it's like, all right, we got to do an extra alien head for this. Just kind of have at it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's usually a structure, like, and it's so much of like one thing leads into the next. So, we usually do have a wave in mind, or, if it's Figura, like, we know, we've talked about it for so far ahead of time, like we know generally when it needs to be done, what it's going to be. And just with the with the amount of figures that we do in a year, that's the part that needs to be in place. Like that's kind of the the professional part of it, or the business part of it. But like I said, that structure, though, it is like it's what helps keep things moving and flowing. But there's also something to, like, I do like to, like, it is every once in a while, just like no parameters, just whatever, sit down and make something is great. But I do like to create where there are some limitations, and sometimes the more limitations you have, like it forces you to push the creativity,
like a challenge.
Yeah, like sometimes it's almost like it's like a puzzle that you have to solve. Back in the days of when we were doing 2002 Masters of the Universe, and the first rounds of those, it was 100% new tooling and all that, and then we had to start learning part sharing, and how, say you put the concept in, and you're allowed 30% of that figure can be new tooling. So then it pushes you to figure out, like, what can you do and design that will give the most impact with only 30%. Or even if you wanted to like really simplify it, you know, if you have to use an entire body and all of your newness is happening with that one head, that, you know, that like flexes a different creative muscle than if you get to do an entire new figure, make it as unique as you want. Like, you know, what can you do? I don't know, like the Boreer or the Boggoblin, like if we're talking Mythic, like the ability to take, you know, take the head and drop the head down more like on the front of the torso, like that changes the entire physique and silhouette of that, that character. And, you know, that being able to do, you know, an entire dragon is one thing, and it allows, you know, unlimited possibilities, but something as simple as that repositioning of a head on a figure with, you know, obviously a new sculpture attached to it. That challenge is a lot, you know, that's very creatively rewarding. And if it's successful, it's, you know, it can be just as impactful as, you know, all that new tooling.